Introducing Stephen Murray, better known as the Energy Flow Guy. Stephen is a life coach and spiritual influencer from Uddingston that we've been fans of for a while here at YouRevolution. We love all the positive content that Stephen shares on social media and his dedication to helping people become unstuck and overcome difficult challenges in their lives mentally, emotionally and physically. Stephen came down to Balloch last week with his partner Claire, who is a Reiki expert, and with his stepdaughter Eden. And then Alan and Stephen got into conversation about his life journey and the interesting work he does.
Welcome to the YouRevolution, Stephen.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Well, I've actually been really looking forward to this because for quite a long time, Mark and myself have obviously been following your content on Instagram, and I suppose it's aligned to a lot of the things that we're really interested in. And the channel's all about getting that message out there to help inspire other people. So I'd be really keen just to hear a bit of your backstory. How did you get to become the Energy Flow Guy?
Wow. I got there by being really stuck for a long time. I just felt so stuck in my head. I was sore and tight in my body. I went to university when I was 18, and I stopped playing football, stopped exercising, stopped looking after myself. I was working at the weekends, working at night times, and I just found that I got completely out of my flow. And I did really well at university, but I ended up just feeling really just like shit. Can I swear? No, sorry.
I could go for it.
Right, well, I ended up, when I came out of university, I was feeling like shit. I nailed it. I got a first class honours degree in economics. I should have had the world at my feet, and I felt that expectation, and I felt really out of my own flow, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I felt all the pressure, I felt disconnected, and I just, I didn't know what to do with my life. I was in such a stuck place. I was stuck in my head. I was living life in my head, completely disconnected from my body. I was not following my heart. I was doing all the things that I try to advise people not to do now. I was so stuck, and I was feeling like shit, and I ended up getting into a job that I hated, and I was in that job for a few years, and it was just killing my soul. And I knew I wasn't happy. I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I eventually, that company that I was working for went bust, and it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, because I went out to Australia. I went travelling. I started meeting a bunch of new people. I got in. My diet had been really dreadful at university. I was eating chips and cheese 3 times a week. I was boozing pretty heavily. Latterly, I was abusing lots of other drugs as well, and I just was in a bad place. When I went out to university, to Australia, it was a whole new food culture. I started eating a lot more fresh fruit, veggies. I met a few chefs, and I got into I got into food, and I started to nourish my body. I started to feel better through that. But a number of other things, I started to getting into the mind. I started to try to understand what was going on with my mind, and why I was so stuck in my head. And one of the best things that ever happened to me was I met my first yoga teacher, Jeanette McAteer, beautiful woman who also taught me Reiki. And I couldn't describe it, but when I first met her, she was just like, she was pouring love into me. She was pouring pure love, and it just felt like, wow, what is this? I need to explore what is happening here. And I started studying Reiki with her. I started studying yoga, and eventually I had a daily yoga practice, which has become the absolute bedrock of what I do to keep myself fit and healthy. One of my biggest things nowadays is consciousness and awareness, because I was so unaware at times. And even latterly, when I started developing my spiritual awareness, I came into contact with people like Caroline Mace. I don't know if you've ever heard of Caroline Mace, but she's a New Yorker, a really ballsy spiritual teacher. And when I first came across her, like, I hated her because she was hitting all my pain points, all of the stuff that I knew that I wasn't addressing in my life, whether it was subconsciously or not. You know, all of the people pleasing in relationships, the holding on to grudges, the stuff that kind of keeps you stuck. You know, that was a big game changer for me, that awareness, and starting to become aware of myself and aware of where I was stuck.
So, Energy Flow Guy, I love that name. Like, I just find it, I think it's a brilliant name. Where did that come from, and what does it represent?
Well, do you know what? I wrestled with this for a while before I ended up settling on the Energy Flow Guy. For a while, I wanted to call myself Dr. Feelgood, but I shat it to do that because I thought people are going to think he's trying to be a doctor, and I'm not a doctor. But it was all about, I wanted it to be around helping people to feel good, because I had felt so bad for so long that then when I started to feel good, I started to look at all the different things that were making me feel good, and it just became about feeling good. And then I put the two together, that when I was feeling good, I was feeling in my flow, and when I was feeling not so good, I was stuck. So I came upon the idea of flow, and then I just started seeing that everywhere. It started coming back to everything, and now everything comes back to flow. You know, and that's what I try to help people to do, is to realise where they're stuck, whether it's in their mind or their body or their spirit, their emotions, their relationships, whatever is keeping people stuck. I help to just hold a space for that and shine a light on it for people to realise where they're stuck and to come back into flow, which I think is what it's all about.
Tell me a little bit about some of your key practices. What have they brought to your life, and how do you support others with those practices?
Well, for me, one of the absolute fundamentals is yoga. That is just my thing. Like the last company that I worked for, my nickname there was Yoga, and they still all call me Yoga, because I would nip out in my lunch break for, you know, a couple of postures. And yoga was the first thing that helped me to feel good. When I first met Jeanette McAteer, my first yoga teacher, who was also my first Reiki teacher, she introduced me to a yoga practice which allowed me to release a lot of tension. Like, I was holding so much, like my neck, like I used to hold so much shit in my neck, like all the frustration, all the sadness and tightness and tension and worry and anxiety. Everything like that, I would hold it in certain places, mostly in my neck. So even just like a couple of yoga postures to just get some flow into my neck every day was a huge game changer for me. One of my big practices right now is a morning mobility routine. And it's so simple, but just taking 5-10 minutes every day to just go through all of my joints. You know, I'll start up at the top and I'll just do, you know, a few neck rotations, shoulder movement, hip rotations into my knees, ankles, feet, and just get my spine going 4 ways. And that's a big one for me. I used to hold a lot of tension in my spine and get a lot of sore back sometimes. So one of the things I do every day without fail is take my spine to the right and left little backward bend and then a little forward bend, just to get the blood flowing, just to get myself feeling loose in my joints.
Brilliant. I do some qigong in the mornings actually.
Cool,
I
yeah,
find
I've never
that
got
some of
into
that,
that,
it's
yeah.
brilliant. It's so good, and some of the routines that I follow, just pulling them off of YouTube and stuff like that. But over the last kind of 12 to 18 months or so, I've been doing it a lot more and started learning and then getting a little bit, just using my intuition about what kind of feels right. So, but I found that that's part of it as well. It's to kind of get the blood flowing around the hips.
Yeah.
Like yourself, we hold on to things with, emotionally, and it finds places in our body that that begin to tweak. And
undoubtedly, I used to hold so much tension in my hips. One of the big game changers for me was yin yoga, because I used to try and force, like even I would do a lot of Bikram and things like that, where I would be trying to literally force my body to open up. And then I found yin yoga, which is more allowing your body to melt and just like sit in a hip opening posture for a couple of minutes and just let your body melt open. Okay, that was a big one for me. And not everyone will be into yoga, but if people are open to it, I love like introducing people to that kind of thing.
what are some of the other practices that you'd be working with people on in order to help them get unstuck?
Personally, I use breathing a lot. I use a lot of different breathing techniques, whether it be Wim Hof breathing in combination with the cold water. If someone is struggling more with anxiety, I might use like a 4-7-8 breathing technique. But when I'm working with people, I use a lot of intuition. So when someone first comes to see me, my first session will generally be, we'll sit and have a really good chat. And I'll be able to get a really good feel for where they might be stuck, whether it's in their body or their mind, or in their spirit, their emotions, whatever's going on. And then I'll start to home in on what's going on with them, and we'll work together to work that out.
What else would you advise people to tap into if they're feeling? I think everybody experiences degrees of anxiety and stress in their life, and I think if there's one element of where people want to get more unstuck and better, it's probably in that type of space.
Sure, I would say it's about consciousness and finding that harmony within yourself that allows you to release whatever is keeping you stuck. With a lot of people, I'm finding it's stuck emotion, and that's one of the areas that people don't really want to get into. But when you're ready, if you want to release stuff, if you want to come back to your flow, then you kind of have to go there and release that. I hold a space that encourages people to open up about their emotions and be able to talk about things, and realise that you don't have to hold on to your shit. You can allow it to go. When it's ready to go, you can do that. I came into contact with a really powerful healer maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and he told me that I was carrying a lot of anger and frustration in my system, and I was not happy about it. I was angry when I heard about that, because nobody wants to hear that, like that you're holding that, but that was the truth. He was right. I was just resistant to it. I wasn't ready to go there, but thankfully I stuck with it, and I worked with him for a couple of years. And he introduced me to a lot of practices that allowed me he held a beautiful space for me to release a lot of that frustration. He got me hitting punch bags, he got me crying into pillows, and just releasing the trapped, stuck emotion that I was holding in my system.
Yeah, and I think that in the world right now, given the way there feels like there's an intensification almost, dysfunction, anger, sadness, all sorts of isms that are going on in the world at the moment. It feels like there's holding space for each other is more important now than ever.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I think anger is one of the most underappreciated emotions. There's so much anger and frustration in this world, and we just need to be real about that. We need to acknowledge that and allow it to come up and out of us in healthy ways, rather than coming out sideways, which it so often does with people. And you get sucked into arguments that you don't want to be in. Whereas if you allow that anger to come up and out of you healthily, which can be done, then you release it in that healthy way, and you don't get sucked into the toxic stuff so much.
What I've found in my own journey is that, you know, life will provide you with as many opportunities to continue to learn the lessons as you need in order to be able to make the breakthroughs. You know, that if you have problems with anger, it's going to give you more situations, more people in front of you that's going to help you come to terms with the fact that you are an angry person that what needs to deal with it.
Well, angry person, I don't know, like if you've got anger in your system, and the right people come in at the right time when you're ready to help you deal with that, to help you acknowledge it. You know, it still happens to me at times, you know, like I'll still feel myself, you know, like I mean, our little one, Eden, she's like, she's 8, and she's so, like, she's a great teacher for me, because there will be times where, you know, I think I've dealt with all my anger issues and frustrations and whatnot, and Eden will wind me up, you know, like she'll noise me right up, and I will catch myself going into a place where I'm like, right, I need to breathe here because I'm going to get in an argument here that I don't want to be in. And that teaches you stuff, because then I'll go and I'll acknowledge that, and when I can go and deal with that on my own, I will. And I won't allow it to come up so much in situations where I don't want it to come up. Sometimes we can't avoid these things, but I'll wait until I'm ready to go and hit a punch bag or go and cry into my pillow again.
Absolutely.
And deal with it.
Absolutely. Kids are amazing teachers, aren't they? They really are. Having 3 of my own, you're right, you get the full spectrum of emotions with them. You can swing from a moment of complete joy and love to a moment of absolute frustration when they aren't getting out the door quick enough, they've not done the 2 or 3 things you asked them to do. And I think often that what I recognise often that what frustrates me and my kids is about the things that I know in myself that I can do better on. What's your thoughts about space as part of the healing process? Because I believe that's one of the most important things. It's something we don't get a lot of in society because we've got phones, we're constantly interacting with people virtually, and everybody wants a piece of us in one sense or another, friends, family, work colleagues, whatever it might be. How do you foster and encourage people to find space?
Well, it's a good point actually. I like to create space where there's been too much busyness, you know, like I like to help, I like to help people find that space in their own head, you know, like I do that through the power of my own voice. Funnily enough, my voice, I used to hate my own voice, you know, like I've got quite a monotone delivery, and I used to really hate it, and I was so self-conscious about it. But I now, I've got my meditations on YouTube, and when I'm working with people individually, I can use the power of my voice to help calm people and to help them find that calmness and that space in their own mind, to help them release the recurring thoughts that are keeping them too busy, too stuck in their head, and to find and create that space in their head first of all. I use yoga to find space in my own body and to help people find space in their bodies. And then you've always got different layers, and beneath that you've maybe got a spiritual layer where you're creating sacred space. I like to show people or help people see how they can create a sacred space in their own lives, even if it's just a wee corner of their room where they've got whatever helps them relax, you know, a candle, a picture, a Buddha, whatever it may be, just whatever will help you have a space where you can relax into your own flow.
What's the future look like for you? Where do you want to take the energy flow guy? And
that's a good question.
What's your hopes and?
I want to have that sacred space. Like I've lived a lot of my life away from Scotland, and I miss the sun. I'll be honest, I really do miss the sun. But I would, in lots of ways, I'm happy to be back here, and wherever it is, I just want to have that space where I can start to build a community of like-minded people. We can start to run retreats and just have that feel of a place that just I'm really into permaculture as well. I want to be growing all of my own stuff. My girlfriend Claire, she's Rasta Reiki is her thing, and we want to start growing our own on many levels, and just having a place that allows us to have that sanctuary, hopefully away from any neighbours and away from the world, to the extent where we can do our own thing and create our own vibe and make a difference in the world from that base.
So that actually ties in really nicely with one of the key things I always wanted to talk to you about, which was just around the power of nature. So nature is almost very central to a lot of the self-care routines that myself and Mark use to keep ourselves well and balanced. How does nature fit into the energy flow?
Well, right from when I was a really young kid, my dad used to take us out fishing and lots of stuff that would be unacceptable now. Birds nesting and like just lots of hunting but my dad was like a poacher turned gamekeeper, if you like, and he really introduced me to nature, and it's something that's always stuck with me. So now, like, I mean, my feet are yellow because I've got my bare feet on the ground every day. It's one of my major practices, is like rain, hail or shine, I'll have my bare feet. If it's not my wellies, it'll be my bare feet on the ground, and I love going out for walks in the fresh air. I love doing my Wim Hof breathing out in the fresh air. A bit of cold water exposure takes that to a whole new level too. And I like to bring so much nature into my life, but also into what I do when I'm working with people too.
Yeah, amazing.